I'm just going to show a few examples of some of the weights that I've made in the past. This is the one I'm going to show you how to make today, and I used it in a previous video when I was talking about the weaving cast on, and it works really well. And I'm using about 3 ounces or 3.5 ounces of pennies in there, and it's real cheap claw weight to make. Some of the ones I experimented with, tried putting drapery hooks right into the fabric, and it was just too wobbly. So I sewed the drapery hooks to some plastic canvas after I clipped them on. I didn't pay attention to the spacing, and these are too close together for a cast-on comb because you need them to be every other needle. And then, of course, I have a little pouch here to put weights in, and I just hemmed the top of that. That one I don't like. This is my favorite one for a cast-on comb because I really paid attention to the spacing, and I made these every other needle on the sweater machine, and I pushed I trimmed the drapery hooks, which I'm going to show you that in just a minute, and I put them spaced on this plastic canvas, and I sewed a few pieces of yarn to steady the hooks, and then I sandwiched another piece of plastic canvas across the back of the hooks with some sturdy cardboard in between the layers. So this holds really steady when I get ready to hang it on the loops to do my weaving cast on. And for weight on this one, I made the pocket big enough to put some rolls of pennies in there, or you can use a heavy rod. Aluminum probably would not weigh enough. This is just a rebar. It's, I think, a 1/2 inch, and I cut it about 6 inches long. Weighs about 5 ounces. Alright, you can use, as I mentioned before, fishing weights. I do like to dip these in plastic or polymer clay, and that covers all the lead, and I just put a drapery hook. You can use an S hook, anything that'll grab onto the fabric. Let's see, and these were some other ones. My husband gave me some little spring clips from a fishing swivel, and I cut off to make a hook, and I hooked it onto a fishing weight and dipped it all in plastic. So there's all kinds of things you can do, and I like these single hooks like this for my edge stitches, and that works well. But on the bond machine for the regular knitting, you're going to want an even pressure of weight across your knitting. So let's get started making this one right here. You can leave your hooks as they come if you want to, but you want to make sure that this pointy thing doesn't go up beyond there. I'll show you why I don't like leaving that point on there, because this plastic is the same level as the top of this hook, and I prefer the top of this hook to be a little bit above the plastic. So what I've done on my my claw weights that I made, I took the drapery hooks, and by the way, you can get a bag of these at Walmart for about 98 cents. There's 14 in a pack, so they're really inexpensive. So you need a little bit of this hook on there so that you can push it into the plastic canvas, but I got some of these cutters here, and I like to do it inside of a bucket so it doesn't fly and hit my eyes, so I'll cut that at an angle, but I'll cut maybe less than a 1/4 inch off the top, because again I need something sticking up there, but I want it a little bit shorter. So I'm going to cut that off, and I'll probably not do well on camera because I'm not that strong either, so none of that's going to fly out and hit me, and I can take a Dremel and smooth that out if I need to. And I really don't like having the long hook. You can leave it. I've used it both ways, but I do like only having this straight part here so that when I get ready to hook it onto my knitting, it's easy to grab on. So again, you can leave it long if you want to. But I'm going to cut mine off to where I only have one little bend here. So I'm cutting it off right there. You can use a Dremel cutoff wheel or something like that, but Usually these are faster. Alright, so I've got one cut. So I need 2 more for this claw weight, so I'll be right back. Okay, you need a little scrap of plastic canvas. This is about 1.5 inches square, maybe not perfect square, but it doesn't matter. So if you have enough of this sticking up, and I didn't file mine down, they're a little rough, but don't want to take the time. So I want to make sure that when I put it in, the top of this little thing doesn't go out too far. So I think I'm going to use this hole right here on the edge and push it in just like you're putting it into your draperies. And this will wobble around for now, but we're going to tie that down in just a minute. And then I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to put that in the middle. I'm going to try to put it at the same level. So you have to have something sticking out on your hook to get it into the hole. It's not too hard, it's just a matter of counting the holes. So here you see the top of my hook is above this plastic canvas, and I don't have the points of those drapery hooks sticking out. And then I'm going to put this one on the end. And if you wanted to double the plastic canvas and put another piece on the back, I would bring these outside hooks in one hole so that you'd have something to sew onto, but I'm not going to do mine that way. For these small claw weights like this, I don't think you need it doubled. And it's extremely hard for me to do this unless I pull it up close to my body, but I'm trying to stay in the camera. So these don't wobble around too bad, but these on the end could swivel out like that. So what I do is I'll get a piece of yarn and sew them down. And I didn't do a really neat job here. You can do however you want, but I'll show you how I would get started on this. Alright, just use string, heavy thread, whatever you want to use is fine. So I'm going to come up through the back on one side of this drapery hook, but I need to move it over a little bit because I want to go into the same column of holes that the drapery hook is already in. So I think I need to go about right there and just leave that tail, and then I'm going to put the drapery hook back on there, and I'm going to come back up through that same hole. And I can shorten this tail a little bit and make sure it came around the front, because the goal is to hold it in place so it doesn't flop around or move from side to side. It's pretty tight on that plastic canvas. I can put a dot of glue or fray check on that knot so it'll be secure, but that one, it's not going anywhere. You don't need to, you know, go too much with it. And I'm just going to jump over to the next one, just going up through some holes here. Maybe do a little bit neater job than I did before. And so same thing on this middle one. I want to come up, kind of move that over so I can see what hole to put my needle through. So it's in the same column that the drapery hook is hooked into. Then I'll move it over and come up in the same hole. Oops, I didn't do that right. I hope I'm not frustrating you too badly. I should have gone down instead of up. I'm just trying to tie that drapery hook down. So there's the hole that I came up in. Move the drapery hook over and go down into the same hole. Alright, but you can see it's not wrapped around the back, so I'm going to have to go back down again, maybe in a hole below if my yarn is too tight, because it is. And now I can go down. So that's going to get my needle where I want it. And then I can go over to the last one on this side. Come up through that hole. I could have skipped a couple of holes like I did the other one so I wouldn't have that big loop. Don't want the video to get too long. Alright, so I'm going to go over that hook and down into that same hole just so I can tie that down. And since I haven't tied that one down, I'm going to have to do the same thing that I did before. I'm going to have to go back down again and tie it down like that. And so that way these won't move, they won't slip off the plastic canvas. And so I can bring this back to the back and tie it off. And you might find a neater way of doing this to where yours looks prettier than mine. Just trying to get through this. Alright, so I may come back later and add some glue to those knots, get that out of the way. So I've got my hooks in place. So you can use fabric, or in this case I had some heavy fabric that I serged the edges. I thought felt would be better because I don't have to worry about it fraying. So I think I cut this one about 3.5 or 3 3/4 by 2 inches, I think. So whatever your pennies will fit into. So cut your fabric based on whatever you're using as a weight. You can also make a little bag with BBs or something like that for your weight. But this is what I'm going to use. So I need to go and sew across the top. I could get by with not sewing across the top, and I could just use thread and sew it like that, which is what I'm going to do for the video. But if you're just using regular fabric, you're probably going to want to take this to your sewing machine and sew a little seam there so that you'll have a little pocket. Alright, I'm just using some heavy-duty thread. If you are using sewing thread, you'll probably want to double it. You can use upholstery thread or whatever you think is strong enough. So I'm just going to fold this, and instead of sewing it on my sewing machine first, I'm just going to kind of center it on there. And I've got, let's see if I've got a knot in my thread. I'm going to try my best to not drift off of the camera, which I've had to start over because I did drift away from the camera. So fold your little pouch and line it up centered on your little plastic canvas on the bottom of it. I'm going to put my knot on the inside, about 1/8 of an inch down from the edge of the fabric. You want to grab enough fabric when you're doing this to make it secure. You don't want it too close to the edge, especially if your fabric is not felt like this one is, because it may fray. So I went a couple of times through that first plastic canvas hole, and I'll lean over a little bit. So I'm just going to go through every hole of the plastic canvas doing a whip stitch. And what a whip stitch is you're always coming in from the back to the front or front to back. You just stay consistent. Always coming in from the same direction, and you're whipping over the edge. And you don't have to pull extremely tight on this. Just, you don't want it little floppy loops everywhere. Alright, so let me finish sewing to the end of this, and I'll tie a knot when I get to the other end, and I'll be right back. Alright, you can just gently pull that down, and it's pretty steady on there, and all I have to do is put my weight in there, and I've got a cheap claw weight.